And you are live on YouTube.
Okay, we ready?
I don't think so.
Kevin, are you? Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to call the government ops meeting to order. First thing is, where's the agenda? We've got to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Do I have anybody to make that motion? Motion by Mr. Conover, second by Mr. Wild, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. We will do the government ops agenda would be first our items, which are number 4, which is referrals and pending items. Then after we're done with that, we will go to Board of Elections, then purchasing, planning and county clerk and DMV. So that will be the agenda. Okay, kind of extensive. Okay, so if you'll take out your government ops agenda, where it discusses 5.1, and that was a discussion regarding Warren County local laws pertaining to the sale of fireworks, to continue with the committee requesting the Director of Emergency Office Services to provide some stats of industry sustained as a result of the use of fireworks and so forth. Now, I think Dennis Dickinson, is he on our Zoom? Dennis was the one who brought this last month to the committee. Okay, his intent, I believe, was to rescind the local law concerning the use of fireworks. I don't see Dennis here today. So may I make a suggestion to this committee, and you can decide what you want to do? I'd like to make a suggestion that we take this to the full board and that the full board makes a decision on whether they want to rescind the local law or not, and to possibly schedule a public hearing. Now, what's the committee's pleasure on that? Yes, Mr. Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think a debate is important in committee. It just minimizes the amount of debate that happens in the boardroom. Typically, that's what I thought the committees were for. So I would prefer it stayed here. Is there any way we might be able to contact Supervisor Dickinson to see if he can shed some more light on this?
I have no way to contact Supervisor Dickinson. We can try to call. Go ahead, make that effort and see if he can zoom in. Yes, Mr. Leggett?
If we may just clarify that this change to local law is about all ground mounted sparkling devices. This does not include airborne rockets and explosives like that. Am I correct on that?
I'm not sure. I don't have that answer. Supervisor Seaver, do you know that?
Yes, and I guess I would ask our county attorney to, at your last committee meeting, I believe we read into the record the definition of our sparkling law as it impacts Warren County right now. And there was a request for our county attorney to do some more research on this, provide that information back to the county committee. I'll just remind everyone that we've gone out and asked for public comment on this and received many public comments, most of which were put into a document and sent to all members of this board by Don Lehman. And, you know, I do think it is a topic that warrants that type of discussion and debate and consideration. It was Supervisor Dickinson who had asked to see if this could be moved on to a full board for full discussion. But perhaps the county attorney could read into the record more information about the sparkling law. The issue here, Supervisor Leggett, was that sometimes even those ground devices do sound like larger ones that are not the fireworks we're talking about. Those fireworks are illegal to be used personally regardless, but still applicable at all of our town events and things like that where permits are issued for them or approved by the towns. So Anne Marie, I think, also spoke on it at the last meeting. I don't know if that answers the question, but
No.
Go ahead, Mr. Leggett.
no, can you get the county attorney on
I'll
board?
tell you what, why don't we let Mr. Tillinger give us his 2 cents on this, and we'll kind of go from
Okay,
there.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, my 2 cents isn't a whole lot at this point. I haven't had much of a chance to even really look into this. My understanding is that sparklers are things that we all know what they are. We're talking about sparklers and those snappers or poppers kind of fireworks, which aren't even a firework. on that. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I have not even had a chance to really dive into this fully.
Well,
And why-
Mr. Leggett,
Yeah, why I bring this up, Mr. Chairman, is that as we do move to take action on this, it's for the public to know that these larger devices were never legal in the county, then us rescinding or revising our law will not affect those either.
okay, so if they were never legal in the first place, that won't pertain. I get that message.
But these smaller ones, as the chairwoman had mentioned, those are the ones that will be affected, and they still do have an effect, granted, no doubt about it.
If I recall last month, the amount of residents who did respond, it was approximately 55 that wanted the law rescinded and approximately, I believe it was 7 to 10 that wanted to maintain the law. And I did read into record one positive, one negative into the record so that it showed some balance. But if this committee would like to not move it forward, and that's fine, whatever you guys want to do and ladies want to do, it's fine with me. Obviously, Mr. Dickinson, they're trying to get a hold of him because he was the one spearheading this discussion and where to go with it. If he cannot attend today, I have no problem in putting it on next month's agenda, so we give him the full opportunity to participate and give us his full direction. What's the committee's pleasure? Mr. Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess considering that the next time these will go on sale is probably December, I think it gives us an opportunity to get a better look at this. And I'd also like to really get a better sense in looking at those responses from the public in terms of whether they're really related to the sparklers or they're related to the existing use of illegal fireworks. And my sense was the majority of those complaints were against the illegal fireworks instead of the sparklers. But that's just my sense, and let's give it another month. Wait for Dennis to give us some more insight.
Okay, there's one for wanting to put it till next month, give Dennis the opportunity. How does the rest of the committee feel? Mr. Conover, you're good with that? Mr. Leggett, you're good with that? Mr. Diamond?
I don't have a preference.
Okay, no preference. Okay, then I will ask that we put this on next month's committee and we strongly encourage Mr. Dickinson to participate so that we can move forward one way or the other with this. Yes, Ms. Seaver,
Thank you, Chairman Beatty.
you're welcome.
One of the roles of chair, as we all know, and maybe we don't, looking back at the 1968 law, looking back at state county chair or county law, it talks about a responsibility to bring forward to a board of supervisors concerns of the constituents, but also any legislation that may be relevant to the body as a whole. One of those things this year has been a discussion about sparkling devices, which took place very lively around the 4th of July, but also all year long in many of our neighborhoods where we are hearing that continual bang and noises and complaints from constituents, both in your municipalities and the city, in towns like Lake George, where a village has sent in a resolution to this board asking us to please consider rescinding that. I believe Supervisor Dickinson was acting upon a lot of those concerns as well. It's unfortunate to me that we went out 3 months ago and asked our community what they thought, wanting feedback, and responded to nearly, I hope, between myself, between our email, our public information officer, our chair of this committee, responded to all of those concerns and questions, saying that we would bring this up in front of this body, which we have now for 2 months. Putting it towards the full board to set for a local hearing to have that discussion and hear from the public is one of those steps. If you choose to once again keep it on this, and I'm disappointed, I know the county attorney's had a lot going on, but Anne Marie Mason did, at the request of many people in this room, come and speak to you last month about it. All of those comments were emailed out to every single member of this board, and hopefully you read them and responded to those constituents. So if we leave it on the agenda for another month for discussion, by the time it goes to the full board to be set for any type of a public hearing, and then if in fact supported, if that change is made, you are well beyond now New Year's Eve timeframe, where you'll have again the sale of sparkling devices in Warren County. And then you're back into next year when you're talking about the sale happening again in July. The use happens all year long. And that is what many of our residents talk to us about. And in Queensbury, we had a very large amount of residents come forward and say how impactful this is on their quality of life. So I would encourage the board to think about the responses that we've gotten in, that we've had in, and that we continue to hear from them on. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on this? Okay. All right, so it looks like we'll have it next month. Mr. Dickinson, I apologize that he's not here. I thought he was going to be here just so we could wrap this up today, one way or the other, but seeing that he's not, we'll move on. The next item on your agenda, government ops, is referral from the Finance Committee regarding the abandonment and cleanup of Town of Johnstown tax map. It's Mosher's Garage. Robert, we were going to need an update and opinion from you on this. So do you want to go ahead, pull your mic over? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This one is on, we're talking Mosher's Garage here, or are we talking the sale of the Mullins, which we,
No, we're
was a
talking,
liability issue on Mullins.
okay, we're talking, if you're number 2, Robert, if you read 5, number 2,
See what I have. Well,
we're considering the
Sure,
possibility of
things
exploring the
we need.
possibility of adopting a local law.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Johnstown is a lovely place, but Johnsburg is in Warren County.
What did I say? Johnstown? You sure that's not in Warren County? I used to play against them every year. Okay. Johnsburg's much nicer, by the way, for the official record. Thank you. Robert,
First, I'm not even sure what part of the agenda they're on here, trying to find it, but.
it's on the front page. It's 5-2.
Oh, okay, that's what. Yeah, Mosher's Garage. Okay, first thing on that one with the Mosher's Garage is just individually alone on it. We're gonna have to do a foreclosure on that particular property. Right now, we're working with Lexi Delury from Real Property Tax and the Spill Compensation Fund to get an agreement in place with them before we foreclose on it. They'd rather have an agreement in place before we do the foreclosure to work on that, so that would be getting cleaned up, whatever has to be cleaned up on it, and going in that direction. As far as the local law goes, local law hold property owners, abandon them accountable on it. There's a lot under state and federal law already that we can go after people for on this. But the county has to be, in a way, also had some, you want to call it damages from it, being aggrieved from it by the having to do the cleanup costs and things like that we would incur from it. That's what the best way to go after them is in that sort of sense there. As far as, do we want to have a separate local law on it? I'd really like to look into that a little bit more on it, because I'm worried about where it interferes with the state law, how the states and the federal government have preempted a lot of the pollution work on it in terms of being able to do cleanup and go after individual landowners who do pollution on it. There's things under the navigation law, there's stuff under the Clean Water and Clean Air Acts on it on the federal level. I'd like to look into it a little bit more before we go after and make a local law to it. We can use the existing laws and go after people for pollution, especially when the county's going to be incurring cleanup costs on it. I'd like to have a little more time, please, to look into it as to whether we should do a local law on it. My gut at this point is maybe we could. I want to look into it a little bit more. I have some concerns about where we would be interfering with the state law for preemption on areas where the state has taken the active role in this. That's what I'd like a little more time, please, to look into that.
Without objection, is the committee fine with giving our county attorney more time to research this? Anybody have any discussion on that? Okay, then we're fine. We're giving you more time. Is next
The
month
next-
okay, or is that?
Next
is
month's
that-
meeting or so would be entirely adequate, should be.
All right, so that's fine, Mr. Dillinger. So we'll give him, we'll put him on for next month. And yes, Mr. Conover?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I mean, when we created this fund, I mean, the purpose behind it was what was happening is we had properties that we knew or thought were contaminated, and we were reluctant to want to take them through the the bid foreclosure process because of the possible associated costs or whatever. So what we did is we created this revenue account where sale of property, the money goes into this account to help pay for these things. But I think the question is a good one, and that is still taxpayer money and what follow through takes place relative to trying to recoup whatever there is that can be recouped. I mean, they've lost the property, that's for sure. But on top of that, there are costs associated with that. So I think it's a legitimate question. And that way we know, our county attorney's office knows that in such matters, it's our practice to pursue this, whether it's through an existing law or a new law, or both. Then this is our practice. And I think that's what the supervisors were after relative to finance. I would agree with them.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Ms. Seaver?
Thank you, Chairman Beatty. Number 2 on that referral item that you're talking about, I'm wondering what the November 23rd, 21 date is referencing for follow-up.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I'm not sure where that came from. That's the first I've seen that. So
That's a typo.
that was a typo.
That's a typo on my part.
It was a typo.
Okay, so today is the 20th. And you're looking then at an update for the next round of board meetings, committee meetings?
The next committee meeting on government ops, Mr. Twillinger will give us an update.
That's sufficient?
October.
Yeah.
October?
October.
And he agreed to that. He felt that was enough time. Yeah, that was a typo.
What should it be?
Supervisor Hogan?
Just to be clear, this discussion isn't holding up the forward motion on this property, but I'm also not sure this property is the perfect test case for proving that we need this law. This is a property that has sat for 3 decades. So to try to prove, all of the pollution was intentional, or it's going on this particular property might not be the one we want to attach to moving that local law forward. That's
Good point. Thank you. I'm sure Mr. Twillinger will put that under advisement. Thank you. Okay, let's go to 5.3. Referral from the August 20th board meeting to look into the issue with Airbnb and the fact that sex offenders would live in short-term rentals for 10 days without being required to register where they're staying. I can tell you, I had a recent meeting with the sheriff, the assistant sheriff, the county DA, Mr. Moore, and the chairwoman to discuss this. And I would like Mr. Ryan now to give us a recap of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did sit down with the individuals who the chairman mentioned, and we had a discussion about what it is that the Sex Offender Registration Act requires. And the point was made that it's not, the Sex Offender Registration Act only requires the disclosure of their residence. And there's a period of time in the law that says if you stay at a certain place for X amount of time, then that's your residence. It is not geared towards keeping them X distance away from a school and that sort of thing. It's about disclosure of where they reside. And the question came up, well, what ability would a hotel have or a motel? And the answer was none under the sex offender registration laws that are in place now, unless, of course, someone established residence because they were at that place for a long enough period of time. So there really is no remedy that exists in state law for this issue. And that is no different for a short-term rental than it is for a traditional hotel room. And the point was also raised that counties in the past, some counties have at times tried to take extra measures in their communities geared towards sex offenders. And the example raised was that one particular county had set a local law to state that sex offenders weren't allowed within X distance of any school. And they set it up in such a way where the distance was so great that it essentially said sex offenders are not allowed to live in the county. Or I don't know if it was to live in the county or also to physically be within that distance of a school. And that particular local law was struck down. So the point is that Robert mentioned the word preemption in reference to the last issue that we just previously discussed. Preemption is an issue that exists here as well when it comes to sex offenders. The ability of a local government to go above and beyond the state law here is very much in question, and it's a matter that can end up in court.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. So, and what I took out of that meeting was exactly what Mr. Moore recapped. Basically, a sex offender can live 50 feet from a school, can live next door to a daycare center. DA Carasone was very clear with that. He said there's a misnomer out there that they can't. He says, but they can under state law. But they have to register. They have to tell the district attorney where they are living, but they can live in any of those places. So, I was rather surprised. I think Mr. Moore was and everybody else in the room with that. But that was part of the discussion. Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, Ryan, what, do you know what goes into triggering that information through the alert system? You know that you can receive that information as public information through the alert system, but I was wondering what triggers that? Who's responsible for triggering?
I would imagine DCJS, I believe. I believe that's where the storehouse is of that information. And as I understand it, you can look up the registry. You can look it up for a geographical area, whether you want to look at your neighborhood or the neighborhood of your school or whatever the case may be, and you'll get those hits on there. And without understanding whatever the software options are that are available, without understanding completely how they work, my guess would be that when addresses are updated, when somebody moves, when someone first goes on the list, when somebody gets out of jail and establishes residence, I would imagine that when that information is populated, that if you are set to get an update of that sort, that you could set the geographical region that you would want the update for.
Mr. Conover.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up, County Administrator. Yeah, we might want to look at that in a little more detail because there are a number of things that you can get, information you can get through the alert system. So for example, any sewer spill. There's a responsibility that there to be a public disclosure, and it goes through the alert system, and that satisfies the public information that needs to go out there relative to that. But also, you can ask for this type of information and other types of information that are required to have to go through the alert system. And maybe we could garner that information but I was curious because I'm just like, for example, if we have a sewer spill in Bolton, it's up to us. We have to respond through the alert system within a certain period of time. We author that information. We put it into the system. We're required by law to have to be able to do that. And same thing here. Somebody's putting that into the system. Who's putting it in, and what are the rules to the road?
Mr. Moore, would you like to reply? And then Mr. Wild.
And I think the underlying issue as it pertains to this question is that you have a situation where that information is not required to go into the system. When somebody takes a 5-day vacation at an Airbnb, the system itself is not updated. And that's very much a matter for the state legislature.
Yeah. Mr. Wild, then Ms. Seaver.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As I'm thinking about this, I understand that one county that basically precluded any sex offenders who are living in the county would get struck down. But is this something that might be worth a challenge, because so many counties and so many communities are dealing with these rentals? And I'm wondering if we could maybe usurp this and have a requirement for everyone that rents to validate that they're not renting to a registered sex offender, and if they are, to locate or to alert, let's say, the sheriff's office and the neighbors. I don't know if we can stop them from renting them, but at least to find some way to get around this issue of not trying to expand the state law, but give us an opportunity to still serve the same purpose for our residents.
That's a good comment, Mr. Wild. I believe that this is going to be a state issue. That was the impression I got from the DA Carousel, that it was going to need to have some state advocacy from Mr. Simpson and Mr. Steck to be successful. But that doesn't mean we can't try it, Mr. Wild.
Yeah, I'm just curious if
Yeah.
we could do something like that within the local law to require everyone that rents
To put it on the
for
renter.
checking,
Right.
right? And
That's good.
validate that.
Well, it's a good idea. Mr. Moore?
It is an interesting idea, and I was just sent a helpful forward by someone in the room of the DCJS sex offender registry. And so the question in terms of implementation would be, if I'm renting my house, how do I vet that? And if I go on the DCJS website, it's prompting me to enter a last name or a county of residence or a zip code of residence. So again, it's geared towards the use of this is geared towards, I live on Richmond Hill Drive in Queensbury, so I'm going to put the zip code in, and then I'm going to see who's around me. For me to have John Doe, who purports to be from such and such an address, it may be harder to do that. It may be harder to do that. And I believe this is only a state registry. I don't know how you would handle out of state.
Okay. Ms. Seaver?
Thank you. Just briefly to touch on this topic, this sex offender registration was formed in 1996. I think it's really important to note that this act is specific in stating the Sex Offender Registration Act does not restrict where a registered sex offender may live. However, if the offender is under probation or parole, other New York state laws may limit the offender living within 1,000 feet of a school or another facility caring for a child. What this highlights is that there are level 1, 2, and 3 offenders, depending on whether they are currently on probation or parole, now referred to as community supervision. That will make the determination as if they're appearing in this registry. So there's really no possible way that anyone could guarantee that they're not, renting out. That's not what this has been built to do or for. But what's being highlighted, I think, is a need for very close and fierce advocacy to our state partners. There are definitely more things that we should and could be doing as a county to help protect victims of crime and to address the short-term rental issues. And I think that is exactly the point that I hope Supervisor Conover is raising his hand to make, that there is some joint advocacy here that we could be doing with the state to work as hard as we can to address whatever loopholes there may be, but also to encourage our legislature to expand how we're going to assist victims and short-term rentals.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. Conover?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Ryan, you're absolutely correct. If that was a guess, although it's a good guess, that I subscribe to New York State Law for any of a number of different categories. And this is one of the categories that obviously the town supervisor that I subscribe to. And so if there's a change of residence on the phone, within whatever geographic area I describe it as one county, I get alerted on that. So and that notice is provided by the DCJ, exactly as Ron indicated. But just so you know, that is a category that's subject of New York State alert. And I'm not sure exactly who's eligible to receive the alert, but I believe it's public notice that they put out. So I think that there's probably quite a wide array of people that can be alerted when there's a change of residence.
Right. Which makes sense. Mr. Leggett?
Thank you. I'm on the website here. There's Warren County Sheriff's Office along with Glens Falls Police Department. It's under iCrime Watch, and it can list everybody all around. And actually, I just look for the email updates. On that.
There you go. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, and again, just on the functionality of this thing, let's pick a generic name so as not to single people out, but you put in Smith. There are 11 John Smiths who come up, all committed their crimes in New York State. So you're getting, there are limitations to doing that. I mean, you may get lucky if you're renting to somebody and you put them in, but you may also miss people. You also, I presume you'd be dealing with the person who's doing the transaction and not necessarily who they'd be bringing along. So a provision like that would require some attention to how will it actually function, how will it actually work.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, the next item is privilege
Mr.
of.
Chairman?
Yes,
Sorry.
Mr. Wild.
Maybe what we should do is ask our chairwoman to send a letter to our representatives, Senator Stack and our assemblyman.
I'd personally, before that. What, are you making a suggestion that our chairwoman does that?
That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I hope the committee would agree.
Does the committee agree that we have our chairwoman send a letter to our state representatives encouraging some advocacy on this particular topic? Mr. Conover, you go with that? Mr. Leggy, you go with that? Mr. Diamond's not here. Okay. And Mr. Wild obviously is good. He's the one who suggested it, and I'm good with it. Would you like to make a comment, Ms. Sieber? It looks like you.
Yes, Chairman Beatty, thank
Go
you.
ahead.
I want to say I'm more than happy to do that. I would just ask to have a little bit of time. I doubt I'd be able to get it done before our next board meeting. But I would like to work with the sheriff on that, along with our county administrator and other relevant parties to make sure that, we have our facts straight and exactly what we're asking for in terms of from a county's perspective and how we can ask for stronger laws. Particularly relating, I assume Supervisor Wild, you're referring in the context of STR rentals.
Yes.
Yeah, so I really want to make sure that we narrow this to the STRs.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think that there's other changes that need to be made as an overhaul criminal justice reform, particularly as it relates to this. But I understand that's not the request here. That request is for the county as it relates to STRs.
Okay, Mr. Moore, and then I saw Mr. Driscoll.
I'm good.
You're good. Mr. Driscoll?
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the, excuse me, I appreciate the chairwoman's offer to do that. Sometimes there's strength in numbers, and this might be a case where we team up with some of the contiguous counties to really make an impact, all of our surrounding counties, and maybe do a regional effort. I think that might have a little bit more oomph. So.
Okay, thank you. One final comment, Ms. Chairwoman?
Well, Chairman, I'm sure you're not limiting debate on this discussion.
Well, we haven't limited it. We've gone around 4 or 5 times. I mean, we can go around 100 if you want.
Chairman, I couldn't resist. I think what Supervisor Driscoll brings up, and while it's a lengthy discussion, is an important one. Maybe what we could do is draft a letter, and then Ms. Allen could work with me with intercounty. We do meet monthly. We do have another meeting coming up, and ask that this topic be put on the agenda to see if our neighboring counties are also experiencing some frustration or have some ideas on that strength in numbers. They usually look for us to, one county to sponsor it and lead first, and then everybody takes a look and see if it's applicable in their county. So if that's okay, I'll move in that direction with both a letter and with seeking out input.
I think the committee is on board with that.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, very good. One final thing before we go into the Board of Elections. Privilege of the floor, and I know Mr. Bruno wanted to bring up an item. So, Mr. Bruno,
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I wanted to distribute to members of your committee something I came across last week, caught my eye. Cattaraugus County Legislature wrote this, and I'll give you a copy, declaring Cattaraugus County a constitutional county. And you can read this. It basically, the county stands as a constitutional county to protect the rights provided to its citizens under the U.S. Constitution and its amendments. So don't get alarmed. I just wanted to hand this out and take a look at it. There are things in here that I like, maybe things you don't like, and just to have you look at it, think about it, and see if it's something that you might want to move forward with. My understanding, this county does not have a mission statement. Is that correct? So what this does, it modifies their, I think they call it a mission statement. Yeah, their missions, parentheses, goal statement. But the reason, as you know, we are, the Constitution is the supreme law of the United States of America. And there are 27 amendments. It is designed as a self-correcting, self-regulating in nature document. By that, I mean that over time, it can be changed via amendments, etc. And that's why it's called a living document, if you will. So I just, as I said, it piqued my curiosity. I thought it was something that this committee might start here, might go nowhere. I don't expect anything. But I did think it was important enough to hand this out and have you take a look at it and get your thoughts.
Would you like to have this, after you've handed it out to the committee members, brought back for a discussion next month after they've had time to digest the information?
Sure, I think that's appropriate.
Okay. Is there any objection to that?
Okay, great.
Everybody okay with that? Mr. Conover, you fine with that? Mr. Leggett, you okay with that? Mr. Wild, you
Yes.
okay with that? Okay, so they'll pass out this information. And Mr. Bruno, if you will kind enough to join us next month, after we've had a chance to read through it and digest it.
As I say, it's just, it could be a starting point, maybe a model, maybe not. But again,
Mhm.
I thought it warranted discussion and consideration. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing it up, Mr. Supervisor Bruno. Okay, let's, following our agenda now, we're going to go now into Board of Elections. And then after that, it's going to be purchasing with Ms. Butler. Everybody have their Board of Elections
Yes.
I
budget?
think that's appropriate.
Does everybody have that?
I'll send it to
It
you.
would look like this.
Maybe you could just,
Do this on the record. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, may I just jump in for 1 second?
You feel free.
Thanks. Hey, just to go back quickly to Supervisor Bruno's request here, in the interest of full transparency and communicating with the whole board, would you please, as Chairman of Government Ops and Advocacy, send his resolution out to the board so everybody can take a look at it? Much like the other very important items that are on your calendar, it's so important that the full board have an opportunity to review the information.
Without objection, I have, okay, all right, would you please do that? Please send the full board this information. And obviously, they're always invited to the next government ops meeting when we'll go over it in a little more detail.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairwoman Cedar.
Thank you, Supervisor. Okay, without further ado, Billy and Beth are going to go over the budget summary.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon.
Basically, we're here to go over our budgets with you, and we, Beth was kind enough, I was taking a vacation at the budget meeting, went over it with the budget committee. And basically, we're here to ask if there's any questions to begin with about what was seen in our budget and what we're looking at in our budget. We'll see a few increases. I think the biggest thing that we have to remember is that you're coming into a governor's year next year. As we all know, it's going to be a very busy year for elections in the governor's race, which is not only going to increase probably absentee and postage and per diem people, but it's going to increase the workload in our office again. I guess it would answer any questions that anyone has got about our budget.
that we can answer.
Or any questions? Supervisor Leggett?
So you're not posting any subscriptions for this year?
No, that was for IT. That was part of our cybersecurity grant, and Mike Colvin did a,
Okay. Right, thank you. So all licensing for your software and whatnot, that's not under that.
Mr. Conover?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. We do have 2 new grants coming in this year that we got permission from the board to go ahead and do a work budget plan for. One of the grants was for a little over 18,000. We have fulfilled the worksheet and budget sheet for that. The other one was a little over 70,000, I think it was, and we're working on the work plan for that. And we intend to try to assist in some of the workload that we're going to encumber next year. That we spoke with the chairman, and we need to express that if there's money left, that doesn't mean that money is going to be there next year. This is a state budget grant. Both of them are out of state budget. And as we know, those state budget grants only come around yearly. Some years there aren't any at all. Others there are. So we're willing to put in a certain amountage, percentage to assist with our per diem assistance, but it would be a one-time deal. It wouldn't be something we'd have to be able to do every year.
Everybody understands that, right? In other words, they're taking some money to assist, okay. But they can only say it's 1 year because obviously grants are done year by year. Everybody's clear with that, okay. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Conover.
You're comfortable with your 200 code and what you proposed as a budget for equipment?
We are. I mean, we've got to, at some point, we have asked for and are looking for 2 additional staff. I mean, over the last 2 years, between 19 and 20, we've been over 35 state law changes that have affected the Board of Elections alone. We've handled that workload, and the bulk of that workload is from absentees with the COVID being open up. There was COVID reason became a reason for an absentee ballot, so we're basically a no excuse absentee. There is a law currently that looks like it's going to pass, which is going to, it's actually a proposal in the Constitution to make no excuse absentees. If that passes, it's going to be a crazy amount of work. We've been working with the deputy administrator. We've been working with Julie from purchasing. We're looking at maybe going into a different direction to produce our ballots, maybe a little quicker, give us better tracking, because the state law now says that we are required, the minute we mail that ballot out, to be able to tell them where it is in every step of the mail system. Once it's mailed out, once it's delivered, once it's mailed back, once it's delivered, we're going to have to be stuck with that with one of these new laws. And it's just gotten to the point where a 4-person staff can't do it anymore. I mean, it's the paperwork and it's the secretarial positions to basically take workload off of ourselves and off of our deputies. We're required to do much, much more work than what they've been in the past.
as far as equipment, we do that one grant, we are, have some equipment pieces that we are including in that grant. High-speed scanners for absentees is one of them.
400. That's what you budget that to 400, right?
Well, it's the grant money.
And if included in your packet, Mr. Chairman, if I'm on the right path at this point,
Go ahead.
for help to discuss a little bit. In your packet, you'll see our personnel request. And we went with what we call 100% checklist to explain to you what these staff personnel, what their job is going to be, what it entails, and the continuous work that they're going to be doing. That's on your personnel budget request.
So we're good with all the machines then?
back
Go
to
ahead.
the-
Mr. Supervisor Leggett, you have a question?
Chairman.
Machines,
You'll see them in November's election.
the machines, we're knocking on wood, we've worked with them. Our inspectors are being trained on it as we speak with the Needham training system. We have a coordinators meeting, which each one of our sites will now have a bipartisan coordinator group. We're bringing them in to personally train on these new, they're called ice machines. We're getting rid of that monitor that all our inspectors fought with for years. It just pops up out of the machine now. Much quicker. We're pretty excited about it. We think it's going to be a huge plus for all of us. So we're ready with them. The machines are in good shape, and ready to go.
Any other questions? Mr. Thomas, do you have any?
No.
The budget officer, okay. Okay, thank you very much. That was
Thank you.
painless.
Thank you.
Yes, you're more than welcome. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Butler? This will be, you should have the government ops purchasing agenda. Everybody should have that now.
Okay, the first item on the agenda I have are the budgets. I apologize, they probably should have been under discussion items. The first budget is for the stockroom. The only item in that budget is for retirees hospitalization. So there's really not anything I have any control over in that budget. It went up slightly. The next is the purchasing budget. We keep our budget very lean. We're basically bare bones. For 2022, you'll see that I've got an equipment request for a new time clock. We're basically limping along on the one that we have. I found one for about half the price of what we've paid for our previous time clocks, and I think it's going to work fine for our purposes, but we have to be able to timestamp our bids in at the appropriate time when they come in. The other contractual expenses, we basically moved some money around based on this year's trends. We took money out of postage, put it in telephone. We had to increase our supplies because our printing costs have gone up with the amount of work that we have. And we have to have hard copies of all of our documents for our files by law. As far as our revenues go, we're kind of at a standstill right now with eBay. That's why that's not very high this year. They're no longer, well, they've switched to a third-party financial company, and right now they're not working with government agencies. So we're trying to work through that. We may have to go to a different platform for 2022 if we can't work that out. Other than that, do you have any questions?
Any questions so far? Mr. Conover?
You know, we have the greatest departments here in the county. They do such a terrific job, but I have to tell you, Julie, your department is just, I can't say enough. I know the other supervisors, amazing what you do. Not only for the county, but also for the
I appreciate that.
state.
I don't think you're going to find an argument. At least I concur. I know that. Other questions from the committee? Mr. Leggett, Mr. Wild?
No, Mr. Chairman, just a statement that, you know, we talked to Julie like that. We all appreciate her, but next year she's going to come back with a bigger budget now.
I hope that was a jest.
It was in jest.
I don't think so. Julie's tight with $1.
Yeah.
She's tight with a buck. That's the way, that's why she does so well.
That's what I'm tasked to do.
Yep.
The only other item on my agenda is an amendment to the purchasing policy. And where this came from was Wayne Lamoth talked to me about including some compliance issues for a Cdbg grant that we're getting. These are things that were in, the clauses were in our bids and in the contracts, but they weren't actually in our policy, which is required for that federal grant compliance. So you'll see on pages 7 and 8 of the policy, we added our standard clauses regarding equal employment opportunities. And what I did with the appendix, which talks about the federal uniform guidelines, I just took that from the website and attached it rather than updating our typed out copy. So every time that is updated, we'll just replace the appendix when it's, at that point in time.
So you're looking for an amendment to the resolution, current resolution? Is that what we're saying here?
It's just basically a.
Need a motion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
would-
just asking
yes, it
Julie
would
first.
Need a
Yeah.
motion to adopt
Okay.
these changes.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Mr. Wild, second by Mr. Leggett. Okay, is there any discussion? And Julie mentioned page 7 and 8, and that would be in the darker
It's in the
black,
bold, yes,
the bold black.
yes.
Okay, seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Done. That's it, Julie?
That's it.
That's it. Okay, Ms. Vogel's on her way up. She's now in the room. Very good. Right on time. Hey, Pam. How are we doing? Do you have copies for us or? Very good. Thank you. Your perfect timing. Julie just finished. Well, just, yeah, if you get copies for each committee member, that'd be great. Yeah, you can get settled in. Yeah.
These are extra.
Mr. Wild will pass them around. Yep, you can get settled in, Pam, relax and, okay. All right. Thank you for that. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so Pam, why don't you get started?
Okay, obviously today is a chance for us to review the 22 budget prep that we worked on in August and with the budget committee. Briefly, the county clerk's office, as you know, is divided into two basically main budgets, your 1410, which is your county clerk, and the public records RSC division, which is also 1665. Together, these are the two budgets that do run the office. Today, we'll start with the 1410. I hope you have had a chance, and we'll give you a chance to take a look at it. Important here, let's start with the revenue. I know you've had a very, very long day, but when you're, but if you would like to take a look at the revenue streams as we see them and the projections that we're making for the 4 revenue codes, please take a moment and we'll entertain any questions. I will briefly state that on your first one, the motor vehicle, remember that is a motor vehicle use tax that is collected anywhere in the state of New York of a Warren County resident. And then it is channeled back to Warren County, goes to the treasurers and occurs in its own revenue code.
That's a very good point, Ms. Vogel, because I think some people are of the misconception that if a Warren County resident goes to Washington County or whatever, that revenue is lost, and it's not lost.
That is
Correct.
true. That is, but this does apply just to registrations,
Just the registration.
vehicle
Okay.
registrations, which are significant, in
Thank
the
you.
state of New York.
All right. Everybody comfortable so far?
Well-
Mr. Laga, would you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With those registrations, if I registered my vehicle in Washington County, the revenues for the registration would come back to Warren County, but the sales tax?
That I don't know.
Mr. Moore?
Point of delivery. So if you buy I bought my Jeep in Westchester, paid sales tax up here.
Mr. Conover?
Yeah. And the mortgage tax, I know,
Mhm.
you know, that can move very quickly, especially down when the economy goes south. Do you feel good with that estimate there? 5250?
When looking at all of our revenue projections, we actually look at, a 3-year period. And so we've been examining that. And then also year to date. So we have been on the high side. This is actually low to where we probably project as to where we're going. I'm not easily given to increases, but I know last year the committee did look at mortgage tax and did raise it a bit after our initial meetings. And so therefore, I am comfortable with it at the increase that we've given it. I suspect that we will probably go higher than that, and hopefully we do. I did notice, I'm certainly no economist by any means, that there was discussion this past weekend about mortgage rates dropping, is what I heard, and for people to lock in those rates. So if there are individuals in this room that are looking about that, then perhaps that there is something to be said for it in terms of where we vote next year. Anything can happen. We all know it. Hopefully between the 4 revenue codes will be strong enough overall, and be able to meet our projections.
Ms. Vogel gave us thank you. Ms. Vogel gave us a history on the mortgage tax, if you noticed that line, to give you some idea on where we bid and where, so I appreciate that. That's valuable, at least to me, to know where we've been and so forth. So she goes 2018 to 2021. So thank you very much for doing that. Any other questions on the revenue portion?
Mr. Chairman, maybe it's just because it's getting late, but I think we should have maybe Ms. Vogel out on TV8 at the Post-Star, working on increasing our mortgage tax revenue by telling everyone what she just told us about the mortgage rates going down and they should refinance.
Okay, I'll call Jesse Jackson up.
Okay.
I got Jesse on speed dial. I'll give him a call.
We do post our by the numbers on our website, monthly, yearly, for everything that we do. So there are comparisons out there that you can actually explore and look at. And we also did in one of our handouts to you, a comparison on that mortgage tax. And I believe that's what the chairman of the committee, Mr. Beatty, was speaking of too. Yes, sir.
Mr. Conover, you have another question?
Yeah, those of us that chased it down, at 9, 10, 11, I don't know, maybe 12, Frank, I don't remember. It was like just when you thought it couldn't go any lower, it went even lower. So tend to be very conservative as it starts to rise. And I think you've been very conservative here.
We certainly have tried to. That's
Yeah, no,
been our mantra.
I appreciate that because it can change.
It can change. I usually don't look, and within committee, we've said this before, we the first few months of the year, nail biters a little bit, but, as we get towards late spring is when we begin to see if there's a trend out there and where it's taking us.
Okay, thank you. You can continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so the next portion of the 1410, again, these are the normal, in most cases here, you have the normal standard operating costs of the department. you'll probably notice there's not too many changes. Actually, when it gets to the contractual, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. You do also have your salaries and your point 110s, 120s, and 130s part-time. We don't have any changes there other than we did have some vacancies, and when we fill, we'll be filling at lower rates. Contractual, basically the norm of many of your county departments, so your telephone, office supplies, repairs, maintenance, items of this kind. There are two areas on the 1410 that I would like to draw your attention to. And the first one is postage. You will notice an increase there. Last year, when we presented this budget, we've been around the 12.5 mark for postage. And I left that at 12.5. During the budget process, that was lowered, $2,000. We are approaching our more expensive time of the year. We're going to be very tight on that. We talked about that in our budget review prep meeting, that I will probably exceed that the 10.5 that was put in there. I did talk last September, October when it came out. I did talk with the budget officer at that time, I believe Mr. Garrity, and I said, that's a $2,000 cut on the county clerk postage in it. And he assured me at that time that we would not go without, but that we are watching it very closely, remain, doing so right now. November and December are typically high postage months. So we will do our best to make it. We're on an austerity budget right now. And so every penny counts, which is why I only made 8 copies to come up here.
There you go. I was gonna say, thank you.
Okay, so just so you know why we took that extra, I hopefully we'll make it through this year, and with the approval by the committee of the 14,000, we'll be in a little safer area.
Okay.
So that's my explanation on the postage increase. Just a reminder about reproduction. Basically reproduction, whether you see it in the 1410 or you see it in 1665 public records, that's what's operating the county clerk's office. That's your electronic document management system. It's everything we do. So it's by contract, RFPs, the full 9 yards. We've had electronic systems for 20 plus years. We have a vendor we went to in 2013, and that particular contract came due, and we came to this board and we had a new contract approved, last spring. So we're in good shape as far as that, but you will probably notice an increase on that monthly EDMS charge. Because I've been here a long time, probably too long for many people.
No.
But understand, back when I came into office as the county clerk, 2005, 2006, 7, we were paying $90,000 to $100,000 a year for that service.
Now it's 2077 for next
And
year.
it goes down. The nature of electronics in that world. So that's good news for us.
Okay, let's continue.
And then, and the rest are standard data processing, and just any questions, on those, we'll certainly try to answer. If there are no more questions on 1410, the county clerk.
If I,
Yes, Mr. Supervisor Leggett.
thank you. Just sitting through all these budget requests.
Mhm.
This looks like there's more revenue coming in than expenses in yours, isn't that correct?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
The
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 first one of
offices,
the day.
the offices.
And you're the last one up.
We should have started off with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably should have, been.
Yeah, we probably should have started off with a good one and then,
Well, I think what you'll find, certainly our offices, we've all known, contributes greatly to the economy of the county and also to, to the operating of county government. So important work, and lots of different parts to it. We operate 6 departments basically under one hat down there. So that's what we do. But it is it's a hardworking department. It's challenging. And we certainly hope that the revenue holds true, but there are certain parts of it that we actually get. So we will take those and we'll use it wisely.
thank you. Next department,
So the next one is your public records. And as I say, there's basically the two codes really lend itself to just the overall operation. I tend to put things in public records, our supplies that are particularly relevant to the public record room and also to the RSC. The Record Storage Center operates for the good of the entire county. So we operate it by staffing, by the facility itself, and by its particular needs. Disposition, electronic storage of microfilm, those things that, are just part of that operating. We did in our RFP this year include in it an electronic solution, a module that is also for the record center. So that's why I broke that out and you see it, in the budget under 425. So,
do you have any questions?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Wild,
So-
or I mean, Mr. Leggett,
Right.
sorry.
Does this include the records for the court that you handle?
yes, actually it does. We digitize all court, Supreme Court as it comes in. Projects that we've been working on in the last 4 years have to do with the criminal part. So we have converted those. And that's what we're in a process of uploading them. So they actually will eventually be able to be retrieved by our combined court office at the far end of the building on demand.
Thank you. Okay, how about historian?
Historian, actually, obviously Stan is a wonderful historian for Warren County and has done a great job in that office. He has a very small budget. And as you can see, and so standard operating expenses for the office of the historian, just moved a few things around in codes. He is at, or was at conference last week. I appreciate being approved for that. I know he did, and I did get word back that it all went very well.
Good.
But it is just a small budget, but we do appreciate your consideration of it.
Any questions on the historian budget? Okay, let's move along.
Okay, and so in the last one I did include there was a records management budget that was grant related a few years ago. It has been cleaned up, it's done, and so therefore I did include it, but it basically is a closed account.
Gotcha. Yep.
That. And,
Okay. Did you want to make any comments on the monthly receipts and distribution?
okay, Yeah, so I did hand out that's the form that we've been using, the format that we've been using to show what comes in to the clerk's office over the counter, electronically or otherwise, and how we disperse it, how it goes out at each month as well. And it's a format that I hope is easily able to be followed. The reason I did include it was just a little note about the mortgage tax, the local and the additional. So we did some comparisons. The supervisor suggested the other day, maybe if we could put those down. And I said, do you want it in this format and creating another table? He said, no, not another table, just the extra information. So we included the last 3 years, I believe, there as a comparison, and you will see that the local and additional have gone up incrementally each year. 2020 was a strong year for Warren County in mortgage tax, 2021 as well so far, and hopefully we'll do well in 2022, conservatively well.
Are there any questions from the committee? I think that shows a nice progression. Very nice. Any questions, Mr. Conover or Mr. Leggett? Thanks for doing that, Pam, by the way. It really gives me
I
personally
hope that was helpful
something.
for you.
Mr. Wild, did you have
Yeah,
questions?
but just Mr. Chairman, as part of a large business and part of my career that had multiple business units, some made money, some lost money. The ones that lost money always put pressure on the ones that made money to do even better. So
Mhm.
let's have a good year next year also, Pam.
Okay, we're certainly going to try. You know that.
Any other questions for Ms. Vogel? Pam, you did a great job. Thank you very much. And thanks for that additional information and so forth. It's helpful.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Time to go home.
time to go home. You can go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think that concludes our meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Wild, second by Mr. Conover. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're done.